Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his starship watching the stars through the main window. His crew worked quietly at their stations while the ship moved through space toward Earth. Jake had been traveling between worlds for 15 years as part of the Earth Defense Fleet. He knew something was wrong when the emergency message came from Federation Council on Centauri Prime. The communication officer turned toward Jake with worry in her eyes. "Captain, we have an urgent transmission from Admiral Lisa Carter. She says all human ships must return to Earth immediately." Jake felt his stomach drop. Emergency recalls only happen during the worst situations. "Put her through," he said. Admiral Carter's face appeared on the main screen. She looked tired and angry. "Jake, I need you to bring your ship home right now. The Federation Council has made a decision that will change everything for humanity. I cannot say more over open channels, but every human in the galaxy needs to know what happened today." The transmission ended and Jake stared at the empty screen. He had never seen the Admiral look so defeated. "Set course for Earth, maximum speed," he ordered his crew. 3 days later, Jake walked into the Federation Council chambers on Centauri Prime. The huge circular room was filled with representatives from 12 different alien species. Admiral Carter sat at the human delegation table looking small compared to the tall Zephyrian ambassadors and the massive Krillian officials. Ambassador Vekthal of the Zephyrians stood at the center podium. His blue skin seemed to glow under the chamber lights as he spoke in his cold, logical voice. "The motion before this council is clear. Humanity must be expelled from the Galactic Federation effective immediately. Their aggressive nature and unpredictable behavior patterns pose a direct threat to galactic peace and stability." Jake could not believe what he was hearing. He looked around the chamber at aliens he had fought beside, protected, and saved over the years. The insectoid Krillians clicked their approval. The gas-based Netherians pulsed with agreement. Even species that humanity had helped in the past nodded along with the Zephyrian proposal. Admiral Carter stood up slowly. "Ambassador Vekthal, I must protest this decision. Humans have served this Federation with honor for over 200 years. We have been peacekeepers, explorers, and mediators across the galaxy. Our medical research has saved millions of alien lives. Our technology has advanced space travel for everyone. Our military forces have protected your worlds from pirates and raiders." The Zephyrian ambassador remained unmoved. "Admiral Carter, your species' contributions are noted in the official record. However, your emotional responses and willingness to use violence make you unsuitable for civilized society. Logic and reason must guide our decisions, not feelings and instinct." Commander Ben Taylor sat in the observer section watching the proceedings with growing anger. He had spent 30 years in the defense fleet fighting alongside these same aliens. He remembered the Battle of Rigel 7, where human forces saved a Zephyrian colony from complete destruction. He recalled the medical crisis on Altair 4, where human doctors worked for weeks without sleep to stop a plague that would have killed millions of Altair IANS. Dr. Amy Rodriguez stood to address the council. As Earth's chief scientist studying alien biology, she had worked with researchers from every species in the Federation. "Honored delegates, I ask you to remember what humanity has given to this galaxy. When the Krillian homeworld faced environmental collapse, human engineers designed the atmospheric processors that saved your civilization. When unknown diseases threatened the Netherian gas clouds, human medical teams developed treatments that preserved your people." Her words seemed to have no effect. The voting began immediately. One by one, each alien species cast their vote to expel humanity from the Federation. The final count was unanimous among all 12 non-human members. Vekthal announced the terms. Humanity has 1 standard galactic year to withdraw from all Federation space. All human colonies outside the Sol system must be abandoned. All human military and civilian personnel must return to Earth. Any human found outside the Sol system after the deadline will be considered a hostile invader and treated accordingly. Jake felt sick. The Federation was throwing away 2 centuries of partnership and cooperation because they feared human nature. They saw human emotion and adaptability as dangerous rather than valuable. As the council session ended, Jake noticed an old friend approaching Admiral Carter in the corridor. Commander Zethka of the Vorthan Republic had fought alongside human forces many times. The lizard-like alien looked around nervously before speaking in a low voice. "Lisa, some of us tried to speak for your people," Zethka whispered. "The Vorthans. And a few others voted against this madness, but we were outnumbered. We know what humans really are. We remember why we asked you to join the Federation in the first place." Admiral Carter nodded sadly. "What happens next, old friend?" Zethka's eyes showed real fear. "They think removing humans will make the galaxy safer. They have forgotten that chaos does not follow rules. Pirates and raiders do not use logic. When crises come, they will need human creativity and determination. They will need people who can think outside the box and take risks others will not take. And if we are not here?" Carter asked. "Then the galaxy will learn why we needed you." Zethka replied, "But the lesson may cost millions of lives." Jake watched this conversation and realized the full scale of what was happening. The Federation was not just losing human military power or technology. They were losing the one species that could adapt to any situation, think creatively under pressure, and never give up when facing impossible odds. The human delegation left Centauri Prime that day knowing they would never return. As their ship moved away from the station, Jake looked back at the massive structure that had been humanity's gateway to the galaxy for 2 centuries. Now it was becoming their exit door. Admiral Carter sat in her quarters writing the orders that would begin the greatest evacuation in human history. 3 billion humans lived and worked across the galaxy. They had built homes, raised families, and created lives among the stars. Now they had to leave it all behind because other species feared the very qualities that made humans effective. The message went out to every human settlement, every colony, every outpost in Federation space. "Come home! The galaxy no longer wants." U.S. here. Pack what you can carry and prepare to leave everything else behind. Humanity was returning to Earth, but they would not return as the same people who had left centuries ago. They would return changed, hardened, and determined never again to be at the mercy of others' fears. The evacuation began 6 weeks after the Council's decision. Massive transport ships arrived at human settlements across the galaxy like moving cities in space. Each vessel had been quickly converted from military use to carry thousands of refugees and their belongings. Captain Rick Stone commanded the largest evacuation fleet ever assembled by humanity. Rick stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the first transport ships dock at New Terra, the agricultural world had been home to 3 million humans for over a century. Green fields stretched to the horizon where farmers had spent generations, perfecting crops that could feed both humans and several alien species. Now all of that work would be abandoned. Colony Administrator Helen Brooks met Rick at the spaceport. Her face showed the strain of organizing such a massive exodus. "Captain Stone, we have been working day and night to process everyone. The colonists are heartbroken, but they understand there is no choice." Rick nodded as he watched families loading their possessions onto transport vehicles. Children cried as they said goodbye to friends. Adults stared at homes they would never see again. "How many people are we moving from this system?" he asked. 3.2 million from the main colony," Helen replied. "Another 800,000 from the mining stations and research facilities on the other planets. Most families can only take what fits in 2 cargo containers." Pete Johnson loaded the last box from his farmhouse into the transport vehicle. He had spent 40 years building his farm and developing new grain varieties. His greenhouse contained seed samples from hundreds of plant species that grew nowhere else in the galaxy. The work represented decades of careful breeding and genetic research. His daughter Maria stood beside him looking at the irrigation systems she had designed. As the colony's chief engineer, she had built the infrastructure that turned New Terra from an empty world into a thriving agricultural center. Water treatment plants, power generators, and communication networks all bore her mark. "Dad, what happens to all our work?" Maria asked as they climbed into the transport. Pete looked back at his fields one last time. Someone else will come here eventually. Maybe they will appreciate what we built. Maybe they will just tear it down and start over. The evacuation convoy moved slowly toward the spaceport. Thousands of vehicles carried colonists and their belongings through streets they had walked for generations. The alien observers from the Federation stood at checkpoints making sure humans took nothing that belonged to the colony infrastructure. Captain Stone received reports from evacuation sites across the galaxy. The industrial world of Kepler 442b presented special challenges. Factory Supervisor Danny Walsh coordinated the shutdown of manufacturing complexes that produced starship components for the entire Federation. The irony was bitter since many alien ships enforcing the expulsion had been built using human technology and labor. Danny walked through Assembly Line 7 for the last time. The massive facility could build a complete starship in 30 days, using automated systems that humans had designed and programmed. Alien workers stood watching as human technicians shut down machines they did not fully understand. The Krillians are demanding we leave detailed operating manuals, Danny told his assistant supervisor, Kate Miller. They want us to train their people to run our factories before we go, Kate laughed bitterly. They kick us out, but they still want us to do their work for them. What did you tell them? I told them the manuals are in the computer systems. If, they want to learn how to use our technology, they can figure it out themselves. Dr. Susan Clark faced her own difficult choices at the Galactic Medical Research Institute. Her laboratory contained 20 years of research on diseases affecting multiple alien species. Ongoing projects could lead to cures for conditions that killed thousands every year across the galaxy. Susan packed her personal research data while Federation officials watched. They had demanded she leave all her work behind since it was funded by the Federation. Susan complied with the letter of their demands, but she made sure her most important discoveries were backed up in her personal files. Dr. Clark, you must leave the genetic sequencing equipment, the Zephyrian observer stated. All Federation property remains here. Susan smiled coldly. Of course. I am sure your people will make good use of equipment they do not know how to operate to continue research they do not understand. The most difficult evacuations happened on worlds where local authorities tried to keep human workers. On the mining world of Rigel 7, Colonial Governor Kethvos declared that human miners were essential personnel who could not leave. The underground operations required skills and knowledge that only humans possessed. Colonel Mike Patterson received the distress call from the mining families. His Marine battalion was supposed to provide security during evacuations, not fight alien military forces. But when he saw the situation reports, he knew he had no choice. Sir, the Rigel authorities have surrounded the human residential areas, Sergeant Lisa Davis reported. They are not letting families reach the evacuation ships. Mike studied the tactical displays showing Rigel 7's surface. The human residential zone was separated from the spaceport by 10 kilometers of open ground. Alien security forces had set up checkpoints at every route between the two areas. What are our orders from Fleet Command? Mike asked. Extract all human personnel by any means necessary, Lisa replied. The Admiral was very clear about that. The Marines launched their operation at dawn. Transport aircraft swept in low over the mining complex while ground vehicles moved toward the residential areas. The Rigel security forces were not expecting a military response and scattered quickly when faced with determined Marines. Mike's forces reached the trapped families within 2 hours. Parents grabbed their children and ran toward the waiting transports as Marine units provided covering fire. The local authorities fired a few shots but quickly retreated when they realized the humans were fighting back. All civilians aboard, Sergeant Davis reported as the last transport lifted off. No casualties on our side. Mike watched Rigel 7 shrink below them as they headed for the evacuation fleet. The mining complex that humans had built and operated for 50 years was now in alien hands. Whether they could keep it running without human expertise remained to be seen. Captain Stone received similar reports from evacuation sites across human space. Some operations went smoothly while others required military intervention. The pattern was always the same. Alien authorities wanted to keep the benefits of human work while getting rid of the humans themselves. The final evacuation ships departed human space exactly 1 year after the Federation's ultimatum. Behind them they left homes, businesses, and relationships built over 2 centuries. Entire worlds that had been transformed by human effort now belonged to others. As the massive convoy of refugee ships entered the Sol system, Captain Stone sent his final report to Admiral Carter. Evacuation complete. 3 billion humans successfully relocated to Earth system. All outer colonies abandoned as ordered. Humanity has left Federation space. The response came back quickly. Well done, Captain. Now we wait to see if they can survive without us. 6 months passed after the last human ships left Federation space. The first signs of trouble appeared in the Outer Rim territories where human peacekeepers had maintained order for decades. Without the Earth Defense Fleet patrolling the trade routes, pirate gangs began attacking merchant vessels with increasing boldness. The Crimson Raiders struck first. Their fleet of modified warships ambushed an Altarian transport convoy carrying medical supplies to refugee camps. Captain Vexcol commanded the lead Altarian escort ship and followed standard Federation protocols when the pirates appeared. Unknown vessels, this is Captain Vexcol of the Federation patrol ship Starlight. You are ordered to withdraw immediately or face consequences. He transmitted. The pirate response came in the form of plasma cannon fire that crippled 2 escort ships before Vexcol could react. The Altarian captain had expected negotiations or warnings before any violence began. Human peacekeepers always tried talking first, but they also shot back immediately when attacked. The time Vexcol organized a counterattack, 3 transport ships were burning and the pirates had looted their cargo holds. 200 civilians died in the attack while the remaining pirates escaped into the asteroid fields where they knew Federation ships would not follow. The Zephyrians had volunteered to take over security duties in the Outer Rim. They approached every situation with careful analysis and proper procedures. When Patrol Commander Tekshan received the distress call about the convoy attack, he followed regulations exactly. All units, we have a Code 7 emergency in Sector 12, Tekshan announced to his fleet. Begin standard response protocols immediately. The Zephyrian response took 4 hours to organize. They filed incident reports, requested authorization from higher command, and assembled a task force using proper chain of command procedures. When they finally arrived at the attack site, the pirates were long gone and the survivors had been waiting for rescue for 6 hours. Tekshan studied the wreckage through his ship's sensors. Begin evidence collection procedures. We must document everything for the investigation. The Altarian survivors watched in disbelief as Zephyrian investigators spent 2 days analyzing the attack site instead of pursuing the pirates. When they finally started hunting the criminals, the trail was cold and the Crimson Raiders had already planned their next strike. Industrial worlds faced different problems. The manufacturing complex on Vega 9 began experiencing system failures without human technicians to maintain the equipment. Production supervisor Krellnon of the Krillian Collective watched helplessly as Assembly Line 3 shut down for the 5th time in 2 weeks. The automated systems are malfunctioning again, his assistant reported. The human engineers programmed these machines, but they did not train us to fix complex problems. Krellnon studied the error messages on his display screen. The human-designed factories used advanced artificial intelligence to coordinate thousands of different manufacturing processes. When something went wrong, the systems needed creative problem-solving that followed no standard procedures. Contact the Federation Technical Support Office, Krellnon ordered. Request immediate assistance. The response took 3 days to arrive. A team of Zephyrian technicians studied the factory systems and produced a detailed report explaining why the breakdowns were happening. Their solution involved shutting down the entire complex for 6 months while they redesigned the control systems using Zephyrian logic principles. Production on Vega 9 dropped by 60% within a month. The Krillian Collective sent increasingly desperate messages to Federation headquarters requesting human engineers to return and fix their factories. The responses were always the same. Humans were no longer available and alternatives were being studied. The Netherians discovered their own crisis in the gas mining operations of the Horsehead Nebula. Their energy-based civilization depended on collecting rare gases from stellar nurseries where new stars were forming. The work was dangerous and required constant adaptation to changing conditions. Fleet Commander Nethvala led a routine mining operation when unknown ships appeared on the sensors. The vessels were unlike anything in Federation databases. They seemed to be made of living crystal that absorbed energy weapons and grew stronger when attacked. Unknown ships, identify yourselves, Nethvala transmitted. This is Federation Mining Operation Sigma-7. The crystal ships responded by releasing swarms of smaller vessels that moved like schools of fish through space. They attacked the Netherian gas collectors with focused energy beams that drained power from the mining equipment. Nethvala ordered his escort ships to engage the attackers. The Netherian energy weapons struck the crystal vessels but seemed to make them glow brighter instead of causing damage. The enemy ships absorbed the energy and used it to power even stronger attacks. All units retreat immediately, Nethvala ordered as his fleet took heavy losses. These creatures are immune to our weapons. The crystal ships pursued the fleeing Netherians and destroyed 3 more mining vessels, before returning to whatever dimension they had emerged from. Nethvala sent an emergency report to Federation Command describing an enemy that could not be fought using conventional energy. Weapons. Dr. Yethsu worked frantically in the medical center on Altair 4 as a new plague spread through the refugee camps. The disease was a mutation of the virus that Dr. Amy Rodriguez had been studying before the human expulsion. Without her research data and expertise, the Altarian medical teams could not develop effective treatments. The infection rate is increasing by 12% each day, Dr. Yethsu reported to the Planetary Health Authority. We need access to the human research files immediately. The response was predictable. The Federation Council would not authorize contact with humans under any circumstances. Alternative solutions were being evaluated by committee. Thousands of refugees died while bureaucrats debated policy. Dr. Yethsu watched entire families succumb to a disease that human doctors could probably cure in days. The irony was crushing since Altarians had voted to expel the very people who could now save their lives. Commander Zethka of the Vorthan Republic received reports of chaos spreading across the galaxy. As one of the few species that had opposed the human expulsion, he felt the weight of seeing his warnings come true. The galaxy was learning that removing humans did not make problems disappear. It only removed the people who were best at solving problems. Zethka stood in his command center reading incident reports from dozens of star systems. Pirate attacks were increasing every week. Industrial accidents were shutting down entire manufacturing sectors. Unknown enemies were appearing from deep space to attack mining operations. Medical crises were overwhelming hospitals across multiple worlds. The pattern was always the same. When faced with unexpected challenges, the alien species followed established procedures that no longer worked. They could not adapt quickly enough to handle new threats or find creative solutions to complex problems. Sir, we have another request for military assistance, his aide reported. The Zephyrians need help dealing with the Crimson Raiders. Zethka studied the tactical reports. The pirates were using hit-and-run tactics that avoided direct confrontation with Federation forces. They struck fast, caused maximum damage, and disappeared before organized responses could be mounted. It was exactly the kind of unpredictable warfare that humans had always been best at fighting. What did the Zephyrians request? Zethka asked. They want us to patrol Sector 15 using standard formation patterns. His aide replied. Zethka closed his eyes in frustration. The Zephyrians still did not understand that fighting chaos required chaotic thinking. They wanted to use logical formations against enemies who ignored all logic. The first alien delegation arrived at the edge of human space 3 weeks later. A small Altarian medical ship approached the automated defense platforms that now guarded the Sol system. The ship carried Dr. Yethsu and a desperate plea for help with the refugee plague. The response was immediate and final. Automated systems. activated and a recorded message played across all communication channels. This is the Sole Defense Network. All non-human vessels are prohibited from entering this system. The Galactic Federation has made its position clear regarding humanity. We are no longer your problem. Turn back immediately or be fired upon. Dr. Yetsu stared at the message in despair. Somewhere beyond those defense platforms were human doctors who could save thousands of lives. But the bridge between humans and aliens had been burned by the Federation's own actions. The galaxy was beginning to understand what Commander Zethka had tried to warn them about. Humans were not the galaxy's greatest threat. They had been its greatest asset. 1 year had passed since humanity left Federation space and the galaxy was collapsing faster than anyone had imagined. The Krillian Collective lost 40% of its manufacturing capacity as human-designed factories shut down across their industrial worlds. Without engineers who understood the complex systems, entire planets went dark and millions lost their jobs. Factory Director Krellnon stood in the ruins of Assembly Complex 7 on Vega 9, the massive facility that once produced starship components for half the galaxy now lay silent and broken. Sparks flew from damaged control panels while emergency lights flickered in the darkness. "How many more facilities have we lost this week?" Krellnon asked his assistant. 14 major manufacturing plants and 32 smaller operations, came the grim reply. "The automated systems are failing faster than our technicians can repair them." Krellman walked through corridors where thousands of workers once built the most advanced technology in the galaxy. Now the halls were empty except for maintenance crews trying to salvage what they could from the wreckage. The Krillian workers had been trained to operate the machinery, but never to understand how it actually worked. Civil unrest spread across Krillian space as unemployment reached 30%. Hungry families rioted in the streets while their government struggled to maintain order. The proud industrial civilization that had powered galactic commerce for centuries was falling apart. The Zephyrians faced their own humiliation on the military front. The Crimson Fleet launched a massive assault on Zephyr Prime using tactics that completely confused the logical Zephyrian defenders. Instead of following predictable attack patterns, the pirates struck randomly at civilian targets while avoiding military installations. Admiral Tekshan commanded the defense of his homeworld from the orbital command station. His tactical screens showed pirate ships appearing and disappearing across the planet's surface like ghosts. Every time his forces moved to intercept them, the pirates had already struck somewhere else and vanished. "Sir, the pirates have destroyed 3 hospitals and 2 schools," his aide reported. "They are not targeting military objectives." Tekshan studied the attack patterns looking for logical explanations. What strategic value do these targets have? Why would they waste resources on civilian facilities? Unknown, sir. Their actions make no tactical sense. That was exactly the problem. The Zephyrians could not fight enemies who ignored military logic. Human peacekeepers had always understood that pirates and terrorists did not follow rules. They attacked wherever it would cause the most fear and confusion. The Crimson Fleet destroyed the capital city's power grid and water treatment plants before disappearing into hyperspace. They left behind a planet in chaos while the Zephyrian military stood helpless. Their methodical response protocols were useless against enemies who fought like wild animals. Ambassador Vekthal walked through the smoking ruins of his capital city trying to understand what had gone wrong. The Zephyrians had believed their superior logic and advanced technology would make them unbeatable. They never imagined that chaotic enemies would simply ignore their advantages and attack in ways that made no sense. How did the humans fight? These same pirates? Vekthal asked his military advisor. According to our records, they used unpredictable tactics and took unnecessary risks, the advisor replied. Human commanders often violated standard procedures. Vekthal looked at the destroyed buildings around him. Perhaps those unnecessary risks were more necessary than we realized. The Netherians faced total extinction as the crystal entities they called the Crystalline Swarm consumed entire star systems. The alien hive mind learned from every encounter and adapted to every weapon the Federation deployed against it. Energy. Attacks only made the creatures stronger, while physical projectiles passed harmlessly through their crystalline bodies. Fleet Admiral Nethkova led the final defense of the Netherian homeworld as thousands of crystal ships approached through space. His energy-based weapons had proven completely useless against the invaders. The creatures absorbed every attack and grew larger and more powerful. All ships maintain defensive positions, Nethkova ordered. Continue firing pattern 7. The same energy weapons that had failed 100 times before fired again with the same lack of results. The Netherians followed their doctrine precisely, even though it was clearly not working. They had no experience with creative problem-solving or unconventional warfare. The crystal ships reached the planet's surface and began draining energy from the Netherian cities. Billions of energy-based life forms died as their power sources were consumed. The proud civilization that had mastered stellar engineering was being eaten alive by creatures they could not understand or fight. Dr. Kethmiro made a desperate decision that violated every Federation law. The Altarian scientist loaded his personal research vessel with medical supplies and headed for human space. Millions were dying from the plague while bureaucrats debated whether to ask humans for help. The journey to the Sol system took 2 weeks. Dr. Kethmiro remembered working with Dr. Amy Rodriguez during the Rigel crisis years earlier. Together they had stopped a biological weapon from destroying an entire star system. Now he needed her expertise to save his own people. Human patrol ships intercepted his vessel at the edge of Federation space. Captain Rick Stone commanded the patrol fleet and recognized the Altarian scientist from their previous collaboration. Despite his anger at how the aliens had treated humanity, Rick agreed to deliver the message to Earth. Dr. Kethmiro, you have a lot of nerve coming here, Rick said during their communication. Your people voted to throw us out of the galaxy. Captain Stone, I know what my people did was wrong, Kethmiro replied. But innocent civilians are dying from a plague that your Dr. Rodriguez can cure. I am not asking you to forgive us. I am asking you to save lives. Rick studied the desperate alien. Scientist, I will deliver your message to Earth Command. That is all I can promise. On Earth, the mood was grim but determined. Admiral Lisa Carter received daily reports about the galaxy's collapse with mixed emotions. The humans had tried to warn the Federation about the consequences of their expulsion, but their warnings had been ignored. President John Hayes faced the most difficult decision in human history. The abandoned human colonies were now under attack by various hostile forces. Federation weakness had created a power vacuum that humanity's enemies were rushing to fill. The colony on New Terra is under siege by the Crimson Fleet, Admiral Carter reported during the emergency cabinet meeting. They are using our former agricultural world as a base for pirate operations. What about the industrial facilities on Vega 9? President Hayes asked. Abandoned and looted. The Krillians lost control of the system last week. President Hayes looked at the tactical displays showing chaos spreading across the galaxy. Every world that humans had built was now either destroyed or controlled by enemies. The Federation had not only expelled humanity but failed to protect what they left behind. Secretary of Defense Don Parker presented the military options. We have 3 choices, Mr. President. We can remain isolated and let the galaxy burn. We can launch military operations to reclaim our lost colonies. Or we can wait for the Federation to formally ask for our help. What are the chances they will ask for help? Hayes asked. Admiral Carter answered grimly. Their pride may kill them before they admit they made a mistake. Outside the president's window, massive shipyards worked around the clock building new vessels for the reformed Earth Defense Force. Humanity had spent the past year preparing for whatever came next. They would not be caught defenseless again. The galaxy was learning that forcing humans to leave had not solved their problems. It had removed the only people capable of solving them. Now the consequences were spreading like wildfire across civilized space while humanity watched from their fortress among the stars. The delegation arrived at Earth 18 months after the human expulsion. Ambassador Vekthal of the Zephyrians led representatives from every species in the Federation as their ships approached the Sol system. The once proud alien leader looked exhausted and defeated as he prepared to do something unprecedented in galactic history. President John Hayes received the delegation in the rebuilt United Nations building in New York. The massive chamber had been expanded to accommodate alien physiology, but the atmosphere was tense and formal. Admiral Lisa Carter stood beside the president while Dr. Amy Rodriguez waited nearby with her medical team. Vekthal spoke first, his blue skin pale with fatigue. President Hayes, I come before you carrying the formal apology of the Galactic Federation Council. We have made a terrible mistake that has cost millions of lives across the galaxy. The president listened without expression as the alien ambassador continued. Our worlds are dying, Mr. President. The Krillian Collective has lost 60% of its industrial capacity. The Netherian homeworld faces extinction from the crystalline swarm. Pirate fleets control half the Outer Rim territories. Medical plagues are spreading faster than we can contain them. Dr. Kethmiro stepped forward carrying data tablets containing information about the refugee plague. Dr. Rodriguez, my people are dying from a virus mutation that we cannot cure. We estimate 2 million deaths in the next 6 months if we cannot find a treatment. Amy Rodriguez studied the medical data with growing alarm. The plague had mutated beyond anything she had seen before, but she recognized patterns from her previous research. This is a weaponized version of the Rigel virus, she said. Someone has deliberately modified it to be more contagious and deadly. Can you develop a cure? Dr. Kethmiro asked desperately. I already have one, Amy replied. I continued my research after the expulsion and created treatments for 17 different virus mutations. The cure exists, but the question is whether humanity should share it. The alien delegates looked shocked. They had assumed human research had stopped when they were expelled from Federation space. The idea that humans had continued working on problems that affected alien species was something they had not considered. President Hayes addressed the delegation directly. Ambassador Vekthal, your Federation made it clear that humanity was too dangerous to remain in civilized space. You gave us 1 year to leave and threatened to treat us as hostile invaders if we remained. Now you come asking for our help. Mr. President, we were wrong, Vekthal admitted. We feared human unpredictability and emotional responses. We thought removing humans would make the galaxy more stable and peaceful. Instead, we removed the very qualities that kept chaos from spreading. Admiral Carter spoke for the first time since the meeting began. Your fear of human nature blinded you to its value. You saw our willingness to take risks as reckless. You saw our emotional responses as weakness. You saw our creative problem-solving as dangerous unpredictability. We understand that now, Vekthal replied. The galaxy needs people who can think outside established procedures. We need individuals who will take risks that others consider impossible. We need the human ability to adapt and overcome any challenge. Commander Zethka of the Vorthan Republic had accompanied the delegation as one of the few aliens who had opposed the original expulsion. President Hayes, some of us tried to warn the Council about the consequences of their decision. We knew that humanity's greatest strength was not their technology or military power, but their refusal to accept defeat. President Hayes studied the desperate alien faces around the table. What exactly are you asking from humanity? Full reinstatement in the Federation with complete autonomy, Vekthal answered. Recognition of human territorial claims to all abandoned colonies. Authority to operate human military forces without Federation oversight. We offer these terms in exchange for your return and assistance. The President looked at Admiral Carter, who nodded slightly. They had discussed this possibility many times over the past months. Those terms are acceptable but insufficient. Humanity will not return to its previous role as the galaxy's problem solver without guarantees. What additional guarantees do you require? Vekthal asked. Formal acknowledgement that human emotional responses and creative thinking are assets, not flaws, the President replied. Written agreements that no species will be expelled from the Federation based on cultural differences, and immediate deployment of human forces to reclaim our abandoned colonies. The alien delegates agreed to every demand without hesitation. They had no choice, and everyone in the room knew it. Dr. Rodriguez spoke up. I will share the plague cure immediately, but I want something in return. Full access to Federation medical databases and research facilities. If we are going to solve galactic health crises, we need complete information. Agreed, Dr. Kethmiro said quickly. Within hours, the first human relief mission launched from Earth. Admiral Rick Stone led a fleet of hospital ships toward the Altarian refugee camps carrying the plague cure and medical teams. The journey that had taken Dr. Kethmiro 2 weeks was completed by human ships in 5 days. Amy Rodriguez worked alongside Altarian doctors to distribute the treatment. Within 48 hours, new infections stopped completely and existing patients began recovering. The cure that had taken alien researchers months to attempt was refined and deployed by humans in less than a week. Colonel Mike Patterson led Marine expeditions to retake human colonies from pirate occupation. His forces used the same unconventional tactics that had confused alien military commanders. Instead of following predictable assault patterns, the Marines struck simultaneously at multiple unexpected targets. The Battle of New Terra lasted 6 hours. Patterson's forces landed at the colony's agricultural processing centers instead of the obvious military targets. While the pirates prepared to defend the spaceport and government buildings, human forces seized control of the food and water supplies. All pirate forces, this is Colonel Patterson of the Earth Defense Marines, he transmitted. You have 1 hour to evacuate this system or we cut off your food and water, your choice. The Crimson Fleet retreated without a fight. They had expected a conventional military assault, not a siege of their basic needs. Human thinking once again proved unpredictable and effective. Captain Ben Taylor commanded the task force sent to deal with the crystalline swarm threatening the Netherian homeworld. Where alien energy weapons had failed completely, Taylor tried something different. Instead of attacking the crystal creatures, he studied their behavior patterns. They absorb energy, but what happens if we feed them too much energy at once? Taylor asked his science officer. The answer came during the first engagement. Human ships overloaded their weapon systems and fired massive energy bursts directly into the largest crystal entities. Instead of growing stronger, the creatures began to crack and shatter as they absorbed more power than their crystalline structure could contain. All ships, maximum energy output, Taylor ordered. Overload everything and pour it into those things. The crystalline swarm, which had seemed unstoppable for months, was defeated in a single battle. Human willingness to risk destroying their own weapons to test an untried theory had found the solution that alien conventional thinking had missed. As order returned to the galaxy, the other species began to understand what Commander Zethka had tried to tell them. Humanity's greatest strength was not their technology or firepower, but their refusal to accept that any problem was unsolvable. The Federation learned too late that diversity of thought was not a threat to be eliminated, but a strength to be celebrated. Humanity returned to the galaxy not as eager partners seeking acceptance, but as confident protectors who knew their own worth. The consequences of forcing humans to leave had been felt by every species and every world. Now, as humanity reclaimed their place among the stars, they brought with them a hard-learned lesson about the value of different perspectives and approaches to problem-solving. The galaxy would never make the same mistake again.